Before I start to read the book to you today, I wanted to show you the toy room at my house because my grandchildren like to play in the toy room. And my sister, years ago, and these used to be in my classroom, my sister made cutouts of lots of Roald Dahl stories. So up here, right behind me, that's Willy Wonka, and that's Charlie with the Golden Ticket. I don't know if you've ever listened to that before, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Um, Down here towards the bottom, oh gosh, can I see that? Sorry. Oh, my hair's in the way, isn't it? That is the BFG. If you're ever interested in a really great Roald Dahl story, it's about a big friendly giant. And that girl, her name is Sophie, sorry, and they were great friends. So that's the BFG. Over here, behind this toy, is Matilda. Not sure if you've ever read Matilda, but if you haven't, super great story. Again, by Roald Dahl. If we come over here to behind me, ooh, that's the Grand High Witch with the Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker. And those are the ancient ones. Those are the witches that couldn't make their own, so they came to get the Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker in the reading I'm going to do today. Over here, she actually made this big plaque that says The Exciting World of Roald Dahl, illustrations by Quentin Blake. And the picture back here, the tall guy, so the tall guy over here, that's actually Roald Dahl. And the shorter guy is his illustrator, the person that did the pictures, Quentin Blake. And up here they were thinking of a new story, The Giraffe, the Pelly, and Me. That's a shorter story by Roald Dahl. Above, and this is one we're going to be doing together, James and the Giant Peach. You can see the earthworm that you'll meet later in the hole, and that's James and the seagull. And then I have one more that's a really great story also, and that's called Danny the Champion of the World, again, by Roald Dahl. So I wanted to show you these. Like I said, they used to be in my classroom years ago, but then I moved them home to our playroom. Okay, let's get to the story. As soon as I was out of the ballroom, because remember, he just got turned into a mouse. He got 500 doses of delayed action mouse maker. You're only supposed to have one dose, so it did it instantly. I took off like a flash. I streaked down the corridor, went through the lounge and the reading room and the library and the drawing room, and came up to the stairs. Up the stairs I went, jumping quite easily from one to the other, keeping well in across against the wall all the time. "Are you with me, Bruno?" I whispered. "I'm right here," he said. My grandmother's room and my own were on the 5th floor, and it was quite a climb, but we made it without meeting a single person on the way because everyone was using the lift. Now, in England, they call the elevator the lift. Makes sense, I guess, right? On the 5th floor, I raced along the corridor to the door of my grandmother's room. A pair of her shoes was standing outside the door to be cleaned, and Bruno was alongside me. What do we do now? Suddenly, I caught sight of a chambermaid coming along the corridor toward us. I saw at once that she was the one who had reported me to the manager for keeping white mice. Not, therefore, the sort of a person I wanted to meet in my present condition. "Quick," I said to Bruno. "Hide in one of those shoes." I hopped into one shoe, and Bruno hopped into the other, and I waited for the maid to walk past us. She didn't. So then, when she came to the shoes, she bent down to pick them up, and in doing this, she put her hand right inside the one I was hiding in. And when one of her fingers touched me, I bit it. It was a silly thing to do, but I did it instinctively without thinking, and the maid let out a scream that must have been heard by ships far out in the English Channel, and she dropped the shoes and ran like the wind down the corridor. So she picked up the shoes and got bit. That would definitely freak you out, wouldn't it? My grandmother's door opened. "What on earth is going on out here?" she said. I darted between her legs into the room, and Bruno followed me. "Close the door, Grandmama!" I cried. "Please hurry." She looked around and saw 2 small brown mice on the carpet. "Please close it," I said, and this time she actually saw me talking and recognized my voice. She froze and became absolutely motionless. Every part of her body, her fingers and hands and arms and head, became suddenly as stiff as a marble statue. Her face turned even paler than marble, and her eyes were stretched so wide I could see the whites all around them. Then she started to tremble. I thought she was going to faint and fall over. "Please close the door quickly, Grandma," I said. "That awful maid might come in." She somehow managed to gather herself together enough to close the door, and she leaned against it, staring down at me, white-faced and shaking all over. I saw tears beginning to come out of her eyes and go dribbling down her cheeks. "Don't cry, Grandmama," I said. "Things could be a lot worse. I did get away from them. I'm still alive, and so is Bruno." Very slowly she bent down and picked me up with one hand, and then she picked Bruno up with the other hand and put us both on the table. And there was a bowl of bananas in the center of the table, and Bruno jumped straight into it and began tearing away with his teeth at one of the banana skins to get at the fruit inside. Bruno's always eating. My grandmother grasped the arm of her chair to steady herself, but her eyes never left me. "Sit down, dear Grandmama," I said. She collapsed into her chair. "Oh, my darling," she murmured, and now the tears were really streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, my poor sweet darling, what have they done to you?" "I know what they've done, Grandmama, and I know what I am, but the funny thing is, I don't honestly feel especially bad about it. I mean, I don't even feel angry. In fact, I feel rather good. I know I'm not a boy any longer, and I never will be again, but I'll be quite all right as long as there's always you to look after me." I was not just trying to console her, I was being absolutely honest about the way I felt. You may think it odd that I wasn't weeping about it myself, and it was odd. I simply can't explain it. "Of course I'll look after you," my grandmother murmured. "Who's the other one?" "That was a boy called Bruno Jenkins," I told her. "They got him first." My grandmother took a new long black cigar out of the case of the handbag and put it to her mouth. Then she got out a box of matches and she struck a match, but her fingers were shaken so much that the flame kept missing the end of the cigar. When she got it lit at last, she took a long pull and sucked in the smoke, and that seemed to calm her down a bit. "Where did it happen?" she whispered. "Where's the witch now? Is she in the hotel?" "Grandmama," I said, "it wasn't just one. It was hundreds. They're all over the place. They're right here in the hotel this very moment." She leaned forward and stared at me. "You don't mean," she said, "you don't actually mean to tell me they're holding the annual meeting right here in the hotel?" "They've held it, Grandmama. It's finished. I heard it all. And all of them, including the Grand High Witch herself, are downstairs now. And they're pretending they're the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. They're all having tea with the manager." Here he is talking to his grandma, a little different than it used to be, right? He used to kind of sit on the floor and listen to her while she was sitting in a chair, and now he's a mouse, so he's up on the table. "And can you see Bruno? Where's Bruno?" "Yep, right up there in the bowl of bananas. Always eating." "And they caught you?" "They smelt me out," I said. "Dog's droppings, was it?" she said, sighing. "I'm afraid so, but it wasn't strong, and they very nearly didn't smell me because I had had a bath for ages." "Children should never have baths." Again, that's not true. My grandmother said, "It's a dangerous habit." "I agree, Grandmama." She paused, sucking at her cigar. "Do you really mean to tell me that they are all now downstairs having tea?" "I'm certain of it, Grandmama." There was another pause, and I could see the old glint of excitement slowly coming back into my grandmother's eyes, and all of a sudden she sat up very straight in the chair and said sharply, "Tell me everything, right from the beginning. And please hurry." And I took a deep breath and began to talk, and I told about going to the ballroom and hiding behind the screen to do my mouse training, and I told about the notice about saying that the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was there, and I told her all about the women coming in and sitting down, and about the small woman who appeared on the stage and took off her mask. But when it came to describing what her face looked like underneath that mask, I simply couldn't find the right words. "It was horrible, Grandmama," I said. "Oh, it was so horrible. It was like something was going rotten." "Go on," my grandmother said. "Don't stop." And then I told her about all the others taking off their wigs and their gloves and their shoes, and how I saw before me a sea of bald, pimply heads, and how the women's fingers had little claws, and how their feet had no toes. My grandmother had come forward now in her armchair so that she was sitting right at the edge of it. Both her hands were cupped over the gold knob of the stick that she was always using when walking, and she was staring at me with eyes as bright as two stars. Then I told her how the Grand High Witch had shot out the fiery white-hot sparks, and how they had turned one of the other witches into a puff of smoke. "I've heard about that," my grandmother cried out excitedly, "but I never quite believed it. You are the first non-witch ever to see it happening. It is the Grand High Witch's most famous punishment. It's known as getting fried, and all the other witches are petrified of having it done to them. I am told that the Grand High Witch makes it a rule to fry at least one witch at each annual meeting. She does it in order to keep the rest of them on their toes." "But they don't have toes, Grandmama." "I know they don't, my darling. Please go on." So then I told my grandmother about the delayed action mouse maker, and when I came to the bit about turning all the children of England into mice, she actually leapt out of her chair and shouted, I knew it! I knew they were brewing up something tremendous. We've got to stop them, I said. She turned and stared at me. You can't stop witches, she said. Just look at the power the terrible Grand High Witch has in her eyes alone. She could kill any of us at any time with those white-hot sparks of hers. You saw it yourself. Even so, Grandmama, we've got to stop her from turning all the children of England into mice. You haven't quite finished, she said. Tell me about Bruno. How did they get to him? So I described how Bruno Jenkins had come in and how I had actually seen him with my own eyes being shrunk into a mouse. My grandmother looked at Bruno, who was guzzling away at the bowl of bananas. Does he ever stop eating? She said. Never, I said. Can you explain something to me, Grandmama? I'll try, she said. She reached out and lifted me off the table and put me on her lap. Very gently, she began stroking the soft fur along my back, and it felt nice. What is it you want to ask me, my darling? She said. The thing I don't understand, I said, is how Bruno and I are still able to talk and think just as we did before. It's quite simple, my grandmother said. All they've done is to shrink you and give you 4 legs and a furry coat, but they haven't been able to change you into a 100% mouse. You're still yourself in everything except your appearance. You still have your own mind, your own brain, and your own voice, and thank goodness for that. So I'm really not an ordinary mouse at all. I said, I'm sort of a mouse person. Quite right, she said. You are a human in mouse's clothing. You are very special. We sat there in silence for a few moments while my grandmother went on stroking me very gently with one finger and puffing her cigar with the other hand. The only sound in the room was made by Bruno as he attacked the bananas in the bowl. But I wasn't doing nothing as I lay there on her lap. I was thinking like mad. My brain was whizzing as it had never whizzed before. Grandmama, I said, I have a bit of an idea. Yes, my darling, what is it? The Grand High Witch told them her room was number 454, right? Right, she said. Well, my room is number 554. Mine, 554, is on the 5th floor. So hers, 454, will be on the 4th floor. That is correct, my grandmother said. Then don't you think it's possible that room 454 is directly underneath room 554? That's more than likely, she said. These modern hotels are all built like boxes of bricks. But what if it is? Would you please take me out on the balcony so I can look down? I said. All the rooms in the Hotel Magnificent had small private balconies. My grandmother carried me through into my old bedroom and out into the balcony, and we both peered down to the balcony immediately below. Now, if that is her room down there, I said, then I'll bet I could climb down there somehow and get in. Yeah, and get caught all over again, my grandmother said. I won't allow it. Yeah, but at this moment, I said, all the witches are down in the Sunshine Terrace having tea with the manager. The Grand High Witch probably won't be back until 6 o'clock or just before. That's when she's going to dish out supplies of that foul formula to the ancient ones who are too old to climb up trees after Gruntle's eggs. Yeah, but what if you did manage to get into her room? What then? Said my grandmother. Then I shall try to find the place where she keeps her supply of delayed action mouse maker, and if I succeeded, then I would steal 1 bottle and bring it back here. Could you carry it? I said. Could you? I think so, I said. It's a very small bottle. I'm frightened of that stuff, my grandmother said. What would you do with it if you did manage to get it? Well, 1 bottle's enough for 500 people, I said. That would give each and every witch down there a double dose at least. We could turn them all into mice. My grandmother jumped about an inch in the air. We were out on the balcony, and there was a drop of about 1,000,000 feet below us, and I was very nearly bounced out of her hand over the railings when she jumped. Be careful with me, Grandmama, I said. What an idea, she cried. It's fantastic. It's tremendous. You're a genius, my darling. Wouldn't it be something, I said. Wouldn't that really be something? We would get rid of every witch in England in one swoop, she cried, and the Grand High Witch into the bargain. We got to try, I said. Listen, she said, nearly dropping me over the balcony once again in her excitement. If we brought this off, it would be the greatest triumph in the whole history of witchery. There's a lot of work to do, I said. Of course there's a lot of work to do, she said. Just for a start, supposing you did manage to get hold of one of those bottles, how would you get it into their food? Oh, we'll work that out later. I said, let's try to get the stuff first. How can we find out for sure if that's her room that's just below us? We shall check it out immediately, my grandmother cried. Come along. There's not a second to waste. Carrying me in one hand, she went hustling and bustling out of the bedroom and along the corridor, banging her stick on the carpet with each step she took. We went down the stairs one flight to the 4th floor. The bedrooms on either side of the corridor had their numbers painted on the door in gold. Can you see that? Room 454. Here it is, my grandmother said, number 454. She tried the door. It was locked, of course. She looked up and down the long, empty hotel corridor. I do believe you're right. I really do. This room is almost certainly directly below yours. She marched back along the corridor, counting the number of doors from the Grand High Witch's room to the staircase, and there were 6. She climbed back on the 5th floor and repeated the exercise. She is directly below you, my grandmother cried out. Her room is right below you. She carried me back into my own bedroom and went out once again onto the balcony. That's her balcony down there. And what's more, the door from her balcony into her bedroom is wide open. How are you going to climb down? I don't know, I said. Our rooms were in the front of the hotel, and they looked down into the beach and sea. Immediately below my balcony, thousands of feet below, I could see a fence of spiked railings. If I fell, I'd be a goner. I've got it, my grandmother cried. With me in her hand, she rushed back into her own room and began rummaging in the chest of drawers. She came out with a ball of blue knitting wool. One end of it was attached to some needles and a half-finished sock she'd been knitting for me. This is perfect, she said. I shall put you in the sock and lower you down onto the Grand High Witch's balcony. But we must hurry. Any moment now, that monster will be returning to her room. So my grandmother hustled me back into my own bedroom and out onto the balcony. Are you ready? She asked. I'm going to put you in a sock now. So knitting is where you take 2 needles, and they're knitting needles, they're big long knitting needles, and you put the yarn together, put them together, and you do a certain thing with the yarn, and you can make like socks and sweaters. And so Grandmama was actually knitting some socks. I hope I can manage this, I said. I'm only a little mouse. You'll manage, she said. Good luck, my darling. She popped me into the sock and started lowering me over the balcony. I crouched inside the sock and held my breath. Through the stitches, I could see out quite clearly, and miles below me, the children playing on the beach were the size of beetles. That's how high up we were. The sock started swinging in the breeze, and I looked up and saw my grandmother's head sticking out over the railings of the balcony above. You're nearly there, she called out. Here we go. Gently does it. You're down. I felt a slight bump. In you go, my grandmother was shouting. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Search that room. I jumped out of the sock and ran into the Grand High Witch's bedroom. There was the same musty smell about the place that I had noticed in the ballroom. It was the stink of witches. It reminded me of the smell inside the men's public bathroom in our local railway station. Ugh. So here's Grandmama lowering him down from their balcony at the top to the Grand High Witch, who's right below, and he's in the sock. And there's yarn attached. As far as I could see, the room was tidy enough, and there was no sign anywhere that it was inhabited by anyone but an ordinary person. But then there wouldn't be, would there? No witch would be stupid enough to leave anything suspicious lying around for the hotel maid to see. And suddenly I saw a frog jumping across the carpet and disappearing under the bed, and I jumped myself. Hurry up, came my grandmother's voice from somewhere high up outside. Grab the stuff and get out. I started skittering around and trying to search the room. This wasn't so easy. I couldn't, for example, open any drawers. I couldn't open the door of the big wardrobe either, and I stopped skittering about, and I sat in the middle of the floor, and I had to think. If the Grand High Witch wanted to hide something top secret, where would she put it? Certainly not in any ordinary drawer, and not in the wardrobe either. It was too obvious. I jumped up onto the bed to get a better view of the room. Hey, I thought, what about under the mattress? So very carefully, I lowered myself over the edge of the bed and wormed my way underneath the mattress. So he's going to the mattress here. Oops, sorry, there. And he's trying to get in between the mattress and the box springs to see if maybe she hid him in there. I had to push forward hard to make any headway, but I kept at it. I couldn't see a thing. I was scrambling about under the mattress when my head suddenly bumped into something hard inside the mattress above me. I reached up and felt it with my paw. Could it be a little bottle? It was a little bottle. I could trace the shape of it through the cloth of the mattress. And right alongside it, I felt another hard lump, and another, and another. The Grand High Witch must have slid open the mattress and put all the bottles inside and then sewn it all up again. I began tearing away frantically at the mattress cloth above my head with my teeth. My front teeth were extremely sharp, and it didn't take me long to make a small hole. I climbed into the hole and grabbed a bottle by the neck, and I pushed it down through the hole in the mattress and climbed out after it. Walking backwards and dragging the bottle beside me, I managed to reach the edge of the mattress, and I rolled the bottle off the bed onto the carpet, and it bounced, but it didn't break. I jumped down off the bed, and I examined the little bottle, and it was identical to the one the Grand High Witch had had in the ballroom. And there was a label on this one, Formula 86, it said, Delayed Action Mouse Maker. And then it said, this bottle contains 500 doses. Eureka! I felt tremendously pleased with myself. 3 frogs came hopping out from under the bed, and they crouched on the carpet staring at me with large black eyes. I stared back at them. Those huge eyes were the saddest things I had ever seen. Look at their eyes. They're very, very sad. And he's got the bottle. Look at their faces. It suddenly occurred to me that almost certainly, once upon a time, they had been children, those frogs, before the Grand High Witch had gotten hold of them, and I stood there clutching the bottle and staring at the frogs. "Who are you?" I asked them. At that exact moment, I heard a key turning in the lock of the door, and the door burst open, and the Grand High Witch swept into the room. And the frogs jumped underneath the bed again in one quick hop, and I darted after them, still clutching the bottle, and I ran back against the wall and squeezed in behind one of the bedposts. And I heard feet walking on the carpet, and I peeped around the bedpost, and the 3 frogs were all clustered together under the middle of the bed. Frogs can't hide like mice. They can't run like mice either, and all they could do, poor things, was to hop about rather clumsily. Suddenly, the Grand High Witch's face came into view, peering under the bed, and I popped my head back behind the bedpost. "So there you are, my little froggies," I heard her saying. "You can stay where you are until I go to bed tonight, and then I shall throw you out of the window and the seagulls can have you for supper." She's so mean. So do you see him hiding? She's talking to the frogs underneath the bed. Suddenly, very loud and clear, there came a sound of my grandmother's voice through the open balcony door. "Hurry up, my darling," it shouted. "Do hurry up. You better come out quickly." "Who is calling?" snapped the Grand High Witch. I peeped around the bedpost again and saw her walking across the carpet to the balcony door. "Who is this on my balcony?" she muttered. "Who is it? Who dares to trespass on my balcony?" She went through the door onto the balcony itself. "What is this knitting wool hanging down here?" I heard her saying. "Oh, hello," came my grandmother's voice. "I just dropped my knitting over the balcony by mistake, but it's all right. I've got hold of one end of it. You can pull it up by myself. I can pull it up by myself. Thank you so much." I marveled at how cool my grandmother sounded. "Who were you talking with just now?" said the Grand High Witch. "Who were you telling to hurry up and come out quickly?" "Oh, I was talking to my little grandson," I heard my grandmother say. "He's been in the bathroom for hours, and it's time he came out. He sits in there reading books, and he forgets completely where he is. Do you have any children, my dear?" "I do not," shouted the Grand High Witch, and she came quickly back into the bedroom and slammed the balcony door behind her. Oh my gosh, my escape route was gone. I was cooked. It was gone. My escape route was closed. I was shut up in the room with the Grand High Witch and 3 terrified frogs. I was just as terrified as the frogs. I was quite sure that if I was spotted, I would be caught and thrown over the balcony for the seagulls. There came a knock on the bedroom door. "What is it this time?" said the Grand High Witch. "It is we ancient ones," said the meek voice from behind the door. "It's 6 o'clock, and we've come to collect the bottles you promised us, oh, your grandness." I saw her crossing the carpet towards the door, and the door opened, and then I saw the whole lot of feet and shoes beginning to enter the room. Look at these ladies. These are all the older witches coming to get their little bottles that were already prepared. They were coming in slowly and hesitantly, as though the owners of the shoes were frightened of entering. Come in," said the Grand High Witch. "Do not stand out there dithering in the corridor. I do not have all night." I saw my chance. I jumped out from behind the bedpost and ran like lightning toward the open door. I jumped over several pairs of shoes on the way, and in 3 seconds I was out in the corridor, still clutching the precious bottle to my chest. No one had seen me. There were no shouts of "Mouse, mouse." All I could hear were the voices of the ancient witches burbling their silly sentences like, "How kind your grandness is," and all about the rest of it. I went scampering down the corridor to the stairs and up one flight. I went to the 5th floor and then along the corridor again until I came to the door of my own bedroom. A corridor is a hallway. Thank goodness there was no one in sight. And using the bottom of the little bottle, I began tap, tap, tapping on the door. Tap, 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 I said. Tap, 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 tap. Would my grandmother hear me? I thought she must. The bottle made quite a loud tap each time it struck. Tap, 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 tap. Just so long as nobody came along the corridor. But the door didn't open, and I decided to take a risk. Grandmama, I said, as loudly as I possibly could. Grandmama, it's me, let me in. I heard her feet coming across the carpet, and the door opened, and I went in like an arrow. I've done it, I cried, jumping up and down. I've done it, Grandmama. Look, here it is. I've got a whole bottle of it. She closed the door, and she bent down and picked me up and hugged me. Oh, my darling, she cried. Thank heavens you're safe. She took the little bottle from me and read the label aloud. Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker, she read. This bottle contains 500 doses. You brilliant, darling boy. You are a wonder. You are a marvel. How on earth did you get out of her room? Well, I nipped out when the ancient witches were coming in. It was all a bit hairy, Grandmama. I wouldn't want to do it again. I saw her too, my grandmother said. I know you did, Grandmama. I heard you talking to each other. Didn't you think she was absolutely foul? She's a murderer, my grandmother said. She's the most evil woman in the entire world. Did you see her mask? I asked. Yeah, it's amazing, my grandmother said. It looks just like a real face. Even though I knew it was a mask, I still couldn't tell. Oh, my darling, she cried, giving me a hug. I thought I would never see you again. I am so happy you got away.